Hello there, and welcome to Whispers of Science, where the biggest mysteries of our universe get a gentle examination and reality takes a softer approach to revealing its secrets. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight, whether you're settling in for the evening, taking a quiet break from the day, or simply letting your curiosity wander into the deeper questions that tug at the edges of our understanding. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey that might just reshape how you think about the very fabric of existence itself. We're going to explore one of the most profound and unsettling questions that has haunted philosophers, physicists, and dreamers for centuries. What if everything you think you know about time, about the flow of moments from past to present to future, is nothing more than an elaborate illusion? And what if, perhaps even more mysteriously, we're all trapped in some kind of cosmic loop, experiencing the same events over and over without even knowing it? Now, I do hope this exploration doesn't keep you awake pondering the mysteries of existence. But if it does, well, at least you'll have some fascinating concepts to contemplate as you drift off to sleep. Before we begin this quiet adventure into the nature of reality itself, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the universe. It's rather fitting, isn't it, that we're about to question the very nature of time while each of us exists in our own unique slice of it. If you find this gentle journey through the cosmos intriguing, soothing, or simply a peaceful way to unwind after a long day of existing in what we call reality, I'd be ever so grateful if you gave this video a like and perhaps subscribed to join our little community of curious minds. It helps these whispers of science reach others who might be searching for the same quiet wonder that brought you here tonight. The question we're exploring isn't just academic speculation or the kind of thing you might ponder during a particularly philosophical conversation at 3 in the morning. It's a genuine scientific inquiry that has captured the attention of some of the most brilliant minds in physics, neuroscience, and mathematics. From Einstein's revolutionary insights about the nature of spacetime to cutting edge research in quantum mechanics, from ancient philosophical traditions to modern computer simulations, the evidence is mounting that our everyday experience of time might be fundamentally different from what time actually is, if it exists at all. Imagine for a moment that your entire life, every memory you cherish, every moment you've experienced, every heartbeat and breath and blink of an eye, is actually happening simultaneously in some vast, timeless landscape of existence. Picture yourself not as someone moving through time, like a train along tracks, but as a character in a book where all the pages exist at once, where your birth and your last breath are equally real and present, just different chapters in the same eternal story. This isn't science fiction, though it might sound like it. This is where our most advanced understanding of physics is leading us, step by careful step, experiment by meticulous experiment, and the implications are staggering. If time is indeed an illusion, then everything we think we understand about cause and effect, about free will, about the very meaning of existence itself, needs to be reconsidered from the ground up. But there's an even more intriguing possibility lurking in the shadows of this mystery, one that might explain some of the strangest coincidences and patterns in our lives. What if we're not just experiencing an illusion of time, but we're actually caught in some kind of loop, cycling through the same events over and over? What if that feeling of deja vu isn't just a trick of memory, but a glimpse behind the curtain of reality itself? Throughout history, cultures around the world have grappled with concepts of cyclical time, eternal return, and the idea that existence might be more circular than linear. The ancient Greeks spoke of eternal recurrence. Hindu and Buddhist traditions describe cycles of creation and destruction spanning unimaginable eons, and even modern physics has begun to seriously consider models of reality where time loops back on itself. Consider the strange synchronicities in your own life, those moments when events seem to align in ways that feel almost too meaningful to be mere coincidence. Think about the patterns that seem to repeat, the lessons you feel like you've learned before, the people who seem familiar despite being strangers. What if these aren't just quirks of psychology or probability, but actual evidence that we're experiencing reality on repeat, with only the faintest awareness that we've been here before? Recent discoveries in physics have opened doors to possibilities that would have seemed absurd just decades ago. Quantum mechanics suggests that reality might be far stranger than our everyday experience suggests, with particles existing in multiple states simultaneously until observed, with actions in one location instantly affecting particles across vast distances. String theory proposes dimensions beyond our perception, parallel universes, and mathematical structures that challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of existence. Meanwhile, advances in neuroscience are revealing that our brains construct our experience of time rather than simply perceiving it. The steady tick of seconds that feels so fundamental to our existence appears to be a kind of neurological magic trick, a useful illusion that helps us navigate reality but doesn't necessarily reflect the true nature of that reality. Computer scientists working on simulation theory have calculated that if advanced civilizations exist, they would likely run countless simulations of reality, meaning we might be more likely to be living in a simulated universe than a base reality. And if we're in a simulation, then the programmers could easily put us on repeat, running the same scenarios over and over with only minor variations. The mathematics of time loops isn't just theoretical anymore. Solutions to Einstein's field equations have revealed space-time geometries where closed time-like curves are possible, where the universe could literally fold back on itself. While we haven't found such structures in nature yet, the fact that they're mathematically consistent with our best theories of reality is deeply unsettling and endlessly fascinating. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from the patterns themselves, the strange repetitions and cycles that seem to govern everything from the smallest quantum fluctuations to the largest structures in the cosmos. Galaxies spiral in patterns that echo the spirals of hurricanes and seashells. The same mathematical relationships appear at every scale of reality, from the orbits of electrons to the orbits of planets. It's as if the universe is built on a kind of cosmic template, repeating the same fundamental patterns across all levels of existence. What if consciousness itself is the key to understanding this mystery? What if our awareness, our ability to observe and remember and anticipate, is what creates the illusion of linear time? And what if that same consciousness occasionally glimpses the truth, catching fleeting moments where the loop becomes visible, where we sense that we've been here before, that this conversation, this moment, this exact configuration of thoughts and feelings has occurred before and will occur again. The ancient philosophers who spoke of eternal return weren't just engaging in abstract speculation. They were grappling with intuitions about the nature of reality that modern science is only beginning to catch up with. They understood that if the universe is finite in its possible configurations, but infinite in its duration, then every possible moment must occur not just once, but infinitely many times. This brings us to one of the most profound questions we can ask. If we are indeed caught in a loop, if this moment has happened before and will happen again, does that make it less meaningful or more meaningful? Does the repetition diminish the significance of our choices and experiences, or does it amplify them, making each iteration precious precisely because it will come again? Some might find the idea of eternal recurrence terrifying, the notion that every mistake, every moment of pain, every loss and disappointment will be repeated endlessly. But others might find it comforting, knowing that every moment of joy, every act of love, every beautiful sunset and warm embrace will also return again and again, forever. The loop hypothesis raises fascinating questions about memory and identity. If we're repeating the same events, why don't we remember the previous iterations? Perhaps memory itself is part of the illusion, reset with each cycle to maintain the integrity of the experience. Or perhaps some people do remember, and we call them prophets, mystics, or simply unusually intuitive individuals who seem to know things they shouldn't be able to know. As we delve deeper into this mystery, we'll explore the cutting edge research that's pushing the boundaries of our understanding. We'll examine the experiments that suggest time might not be fundamental, the mathematical models that allow for closed time-like curves, and the philosophical implications of living in a reality where past, present, and future might all be equally real and simultaneously accessible. We'll investigate the strange world of quantum mechanics, where particles seem to exist in multiple states until observed, where the act of measurement appears to collapse infinite possibilities into a single reality. Could consciousness be the mechanism by which the universe selects which iteration of the loop to experience? Are we, through our collective observation and awareness, actually choosing our path through the eternal recurrence? The journey we're beginning tonight will take us through the halls of physics laboratories, where scientists are discovering that time might not flow the way we think it does, through the minds of philosophers who have long suspected that reality is far stranger than it appears, and into the realm of pure mathematics, where the equations themselves seem to whisper secrets about the true nature of existence. We'll explore what it might mean for free will if our choices are part of an eternal pattern, what it might mean for meaning itself if every moment is both unique and endlessly repeated. We'll consider the possibility that consciousness might be the universe's way of experiencing itself, and that what we call individual awareness might actually be glimpses of a much larger, more complex reality, unfolding across dimensions we can barely imagine. This isn't just an intellectual exercise, though the ideas we'll encounter are certainly intellectually stimulating. This is about understanding our place in the cosmos, about making sense of the strange patterns and synchronicities that seem to weave through our lives, like golden threads in a vast tapestry. It's about finding meaning and beauty in a reality that might be far more mysterious and wonderful than we ever dared to imagine. So settle in, dear fellow travelers, and prepare to question everything you think you know about the nature of time, reality, and your own existence. We're about to embark on a journey that might just change how you see every moment, every choice, every breath you take, whether time is an illusion, whether we're caught in an eternal loop, or whether the truth is something even stranger than we can currently conceive. One thing is certain: the exploration itself is endlessly fascinating. The whispers of science are calling, and tonight we're going to listen very carefully indeed. Let's begin our exploration by examining what might be the most fundamental question of all. What exactly is time? You might think this is a simple question with an obvious answer, but the more scientists have studied it, the more elusive and mysterious time has become. Like trying to catch moonlight in your hands, every attempt to pin down the true nature of time seems to reveal that we're grasping at something that might not even be there. For most of human history, time felt as real and solid as the ground beneath our feet. We watched the sun rise and set. We observed the changing seasons. We felt ourselves aging moment by moment. Time seemed to flow like a river, carrying us inexorably from birth toward death, from past through present into future. This intuitive understanding of time as a flowing linear progression has shaped every aspect of human civilization, from our languages to our philosophies, from our art to our science. But then came Albert Einstein, and everything changed. Einstein's theories of relativity didn't just modify our understanding of time, they shattered it completely. Suddenly, time wasn't universal or absolute. It could stretch and compress, speed up and slow down, depending on how fast you were moving or how strong the gravitational field around you happened to be. Time, it turned out, was intimately connected to space, woven together into a single fabric called space-time that could be bent and twisted by matter and energy. This was revolutionary enough, but the implications went much deeper. If time could be manipulated, if it wasn't the steady, unchanging backdrop we thought it was, then what was it really? Einstein himself struggled with this question, and his insights led to one of the most startling possibilities in all of physics: that time might not flow at all. Picture, if you will, a vast landscape stretching out in all directions. In this landscape, every moment that has ever existed or ever will exist is laid out like points on a map. Your birth is there, your first day of school, your first heartbreak, the moment you're experiencing right now as you listen to these words, and your final breath, all equally real, all equally present. This is what physicists call the block universe, and it suggests that time doesn't flow like a river at all. Instead, we exist as four-dimensional objects stretched across this temporal landscape, experiencing the illusion of movement through time because of the way our consciousness samples different slices of our eternal existence. It's a mind-bending concept, and it gets stranger still when you consider what it might mean for our everyday experience. If all moments exist simultaneously, then the flow of time we feel so keenly is nothing more than a trick of perception, a neurological magic show put on by our brains to help us navigate reality. The past isn't gone, it's still there, just as real as this moment. The future isn't yet to come, it's already laid out, waiting for our consciousness to arrive at it. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. Recent discoveries in quantum mechanics have revealed that reality at its most fundamental level operates according to principles that seem to defy everything we think we know about cause and effect, about the relationship between past, present, and future. Quantum particles don't just exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. They seem to be influenced by measurements that haven't happened yet, as if the future is somehow reaching back to influence the past. In the strange world of quantum mechanics, physicists have observed phenomena that suggest time might not even be a fundamental property of reality. Some of the most successful theories in physics describe the universe without any reference to time at all. Time emerges from more basic processes, like temperature emerging from the motion of countless molecules. This is called emergent time, and it implies that the ticking of clocks, the aging of our bodies, the very experience of duration itself, might all be secondary effects of deeper, timeless processes. Consider the implications of this for a moment. If time is emergent, rather than fundamental, then at the deepest level of reality, everything simply is. There's no before or after, no cause and effect in the way we normally understand it. The universe exists as a vast, timeless whole, and our experience of temporal flow is like watching a movie, frame by frame, when in reality all the frames exist simultaneously on the film strip. This brings us to one of the most intriguing possibilities we'll explore tonight. What if our consciousness, our ability to be aware and to remember, is what creates the illusion of time? What if time is fundamentally a property of minds rather than a property of the physical universe? Some philosophers and scientists have proposed exactly this, suggesting that time is a kind of cognitive framework we impose on reality to make sense of change and causation. If consciousness creates time, then the question becomes, what happens when consciousness encounters patterns, repetitions, cycles that suggest reality itself might be cyclical rather than linear? Throughout human history, people have reported experiences that seem to hint at something deeper than coincidence, something that suggests we might have been here before, done this before, lived through these exact moments in some previous iteration of existence. The phenomenon we call déjà vu is nearly universal. Almost everyone has experienced that strange, unsettling feeling of having lived through a moment before, of knowing what's going to happen next, even though logic tells us we've never been in this situation. Most scientists explain déjà vu as a glitch in memory processing, a moment when our brains mistakenly tag a new experience as familiar. But what if it's not a glitch at all? What if it's a glimpse behind the curtain, a moment when the loop becomes visible? Consider the mathematical concept of eternal recurrence, first seriously proposed by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. If the universe contains a finite amount of matter and energy, but exists for an infinite amount of time, then eventually every possible configuration of particles must repeat. Every moment, every thought, every conversation, every breath you've ever taken must occur again, exactly as it did before, infinite times across infinite duration. This isn't just philosophical speculation anymore. Modern cosmology has given us models of the universe that allow for exactly this kind of cyclical existence. Some theories suggest that our universe undergoes endless cycles of expansion and contraction, big bangs followed by big crunches, with each cycle potentially playing out the same events over and over. Other models propose that space itself might be infinite, containing infinite regions where every possible configuration of matter plays out somewhere, including perfect copies of you living through this exact moment. But perhaps even more intriguing is the possibility that consciousness itself might be creating loops in time. If our awareness is what collapses quantum possibilities into definite realities, as some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest, then perhaps our collective consciousness is steering reality along particular paths, creating stable patterns that repeat across vast cycles of time. Think about the strange synchronicities in your own life. Those moments when events align in ways that seem almost too meaningful to be random. You think of someone you haven't seen in years, and they call you that very day. You need a particular piece of information, and it appears in the most unlikely place at exactly the right moment. You meet a stranger who seems oddly familiar, who knows things about you they shouldn't know, who fits into your life as if they've always been there. Jung called these meaningful coincidences synchronicities, and he believed they were evidence of an underlying connectedness in reality, a kind of cosmic web of meaning that transcends ordinary causation. But what if synchronicities are actually evidence of something even more profound? What if they're moments when the loop becomes visible, when the repetitive nature of reality shows through the illusion of linear time? Recent research in neuroscience has revealed that our brains are constantly making predictions about the future, using past experience to anticipate what's coming next. We're not just passive observers of reality, we're active participants in creating our experience of it. Our expectations literally shape what we perceive, what we remember, and how we interpret the world around us. If consciousness is this active in shaping reality, then perhaps it's also active in creating the patterns and cycles that seem to govern existence. The loop hypothesis suggests that these patterns aren't just psychological quirks or statistical coincidences. They're evidence that reality itself is structured cyclically, that we're living through iterations of events that have happened before and will happen again. The key insight is that each iteration isn't exactly identical. Like a spiral staircase, we might be covering the same ground, but at a slightly different level each time, learning, growing, evolving through the repetition. This could explain why certain lessons seem to repeat in our lives until we truly understand them, why certain relationships and situations keep appearing in different forms, but with similar underlying dynamics. It could explain why some people seem to have an uncanny ability to predict events or understand complex situations intuitively, as if they're drawing on memories from previous iterations. The implications are staggering. If we're living in loops, then every choice we make has been made before and will be made again. But rather than making our decisions meaningless, this might make them infinitely meaningful. Each iteration gives us another opportunity to choose differently, to learn, to grow, to break patterns that no longer serve us and create new ones that do. Some of the world's most advanced computer simulations already operate on loop like principles, using algorithms that iterate through the same processes over and over, making tiny adjustments each time until they arrive at optimal solutions. What if consciousness itself operates similarly, using the repetition of experience to gradually perfect our understanding of reality and our ability to navigate it? The ancient wisdom traditions understood something about cyclical time that modern science is only beginning to rediscover: the Hindu concept of kalpas, vast cycles of creation and destruction spanning billions of years. The Buddhist wheel of samsara, the endless cycle of death and rebirth. The Mayan calendar's long count, tracking enormous cycles of time that dwarf human history. These weren't just mythological concepts, they were sophisticated attempts to map the true structure of temporal reality. What if these ancient insights were correct? What if time really is cyclical rather than linear, and our modern obsession with progress and forward movement is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how reality actually works? What if the future isn't ahead of us, but around us, accessible through different kinds of awareness, different ways of engaging with the flow of existence? As we continue our exploration tonight, we'll delve deeper into the scientific evidence for cyclical time, from the quantum mechanical phenomena that seem to violate causality to the cosmological models that predict endless repetition. We'll examine what it might mean for consciousness to exist within loops of time, and how we might learn to recognize the patterns and cycles that govern our existence. We'll explore the possibility that what we call intuition might actually be memory leaking through from previous iterations, that what we call creativity might be the universe's way of introducing variation into the eternal repetition. We'll consider whether free will is compatible with cyclical existence, and whether the loops themselves might be evolving, growing more complex and beautiful with each iteration. The journey we're on together tonight isn't just about understanding abstract physics or philosophy. It's about recognizing the profound mystery that surrounds our very existence, the possibility that reality is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. Whether time is an illusion, whether we're caught in cosmic loops, or whether the truth is something even more extraordinary, one thing is becoming clear: the universe is not the simple, mechanical clockwork our ancestors thought it was. We live in a reality where consciousness and cosmos dance together in ways we're only beginning to understand, where the boundary between observer and observed, between mind and matter, between time and eternity, might be far more fluid than we ever dared to dream. And in that fluidity, in that mystery, lies infinite possibility. The deeper we venture into this mystery, the more we discover that our intuitive understanding of reality might be like a beautiful painting that looks perfect from a distance, but reveals brushstrokes and canvas when we examine it closely. And what we're finding beneath the surface of our everyday experience is something far more intricate and mysterious than we ever suspected. Let's consider for a moment what happens when we try to measure time itself. You might think this would be straightforward. After all, we have atomic clocks that can measure time with extraordinary precision, keeping track of seconds that are defined by the vibrations of cesium atoms. But here's where things get peculiar. When physicists try to find time in their most fundamental equations, when they peer into the quantum realm where reality reveals its deepest secrets, time starts to behave in ways that challenge everything we think we know about it. In quantum mechanics, we encounter something called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which attempts to describe the quantum state of the entire universe. But here's the startling thing about this equation: it contains no time variable at all. According to this mathematical description of reality, the universe simply exists in a timeless state, with no past, no future, just an eternal now that encompasses everything that ever was or will be. This isn't just an abstract mathematical curiosity. It suggests that at the most fundamental level of reality, time might not exist at all. Instead, what we experience as the flow of time might emerge from the complex interactions between consciousness and the quantum substrate of reality, like waves emerging from the ocean or melodies emerging from the vibrations of air molecules. But if time is emergent rather than fundamental, then we need to ask ourselves a profound question. What is it that's doing the emerging? What underlying reality gives birth to our experience of temporal flow? And here we encounter one of the most intriguing possibilities in all of science: the idea that consciousness itself might be the key to understanding not just time, but the very structure of reality. Consider what happens when you remember something. In that moment of recollection, the past becomes present in your awareness. The memory isn't stored somewhere else and then retrieved, it becomes real in the immediacy of your consciousness. Similarly, when you anticipate the future, when you plan or worry or dream about what's to come, you're making the future present in your mind. Consciousness, it seems, has this remarkable ability to collapse the boundaries between past, present, and future, to make all of time somehow available in the eternal now of awareness. What if this isn't just a quirk of how minds work, but a clue to how reality itself is structured? What if consciousness doesn't just experience time, but actually participates in creating it? This would mean that our awareness isn't separate from the physical universe, passively observing from the outside, but intimately connected to the fabric of reality itself, helping to weave the patterns we call space and time. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of the loop hypothesis. If consciousness participates in creating temporal reality, then perhaps it also participates in creating the cyclical patterns we've been exploring. Think about how your own awareness seems to move in cycles: periods of waking and sleeping, attention and distraction, engagement and withdrawal. Your very breathing follows a cyclical pattern, as does your heartbeat, your brain waves, the flow of thoughts and emotions through your mind. What if these personal cycles are reflections of much larger cosmic cycles, patterns that extend far beyond individual consciousness to encompass the entire universe? Ancient traditions spoke of the music of the spheres, the idea that celestial bodies move in harmonious patterns that create a kind of cosmic symphony. Modern science has discovered that this metaphor is more literal than we might have imagined. Pulsars emit regular radio pulses, like cosmic metronomes. Galaxies rotate in vast spirals that take millions of years to complete, and the universe itself expands and contracts in ways that might be cyclical. But here's where the mystery deepens even further. If these cycles exist at every level of reality, from the quantum to the cosmic, then perhaps they intersect and interact in ways that create the complex patterns we observe in our lives. Those synchronicities, those moments of déjà vu, Those strange coincidences that seem too meaningful to be random might be points where different cycles align, creating windows of heightened possibility and awareness. Recent research in complexity science has revealed that when different cyclical systems interact, they can create what scientists call emergent properties, new patterns and behaviors that arise from the interaction itself rather than from any individual component. Could consciousness be an emergent property that arises when cosmic cycles interact in just the right way? And could the loops we've been discussing be the natural result of consciousness trying to maintain coherence within these vast interconnected cycles? This perspective offers a radically different way of understanding our place in the universe. Instead of being isolated, individuals moving through linear time toward inevitable death, we might be expressions of cosmic consciousness experiencing itself through countless iterations, each cycle an opportunity for the universe to know itself more deeply, to explore new possibilities, to evolve in ways that transcend individual lifetimes. The implications for how we understand memory become particularly intriguing from this perspective. What we call personal memory might be just the tip of an iceberg, the small portion of cosmic memory that's accessible to our individual awareness. Those moments when you know something you shouldn't know, when you have insights that seem to come from nowhere, when you feel a deep familiarity with places you've never been or people you've never met, might be instances when you're accessing deeper layers of memory, patterns that have been repeated across multiple cycles of existence. This could explain the phenomenon that psychologists call cryptomnesia, those times when we think we're having an original thought, but we're actually remembering something we've forgotten we learned. What if some of these experiences aren't just forgotten memories from this lifetime, but memories that transcend individual existence, patterns of knowledge and understanding that persist across cycles? Indigenous cultures around the world have long spoken of ancestral memory, the idea that we carry within us the experiences and wisdom of those who came before. What if this isn't just metaphorical, but reflects a literal truth about how consciousness operates within cyclical time? What if the ancestors aren't behind us in linear time, but around us in the eternal present, their experiences accessible to us, because all moments exist simultaneously in the timeless landscape of reality? The loop hypothesis also offers a fascinating perspective on what we call learning and growth. If we're cycling through similar experiences over and over, then each iteration becomes an opportunity to respond differently, to make new choices, to break old patterns and create new ones. The repetition isn't meaningless, it's educational, like practicing a musical piece until you can play it perfectly, or like a sculptor working the same stone until it reveals its hidden beauty. This might explain why certain themes seem to repeat in our lives, why we encounter similar challenges and opportunities in different forms, but with recognizable underlying patterns. Each encounter with these themes gives us another chance to understand them more deeply, to respond with greater wisdom, to integrate the lessons they offer into our evolving consciousness. From this perspective, what we call personal growth might actually be cosmic evolution, the universe using individual consciousness as a laboratory for exploring new possibilities, new ways of being, new forms of beauty and understanding. Your struggles and triumphs, your moments of clarity and confusion, Your experiences of love and loss all become part of a vast cosmic experiment in consciousness, each cycle adding new data to the universe's growing understanding of itself. But this raises profound questions about identity and continuity. If we're cycling through experiences, what persists from one iteration to the next? What makes you you across multiple cycles of existence? The traditional answer might be something like a soul or essential self that remains constant while everything else changes. But the loop hypothesis suggests something more fluid and dynamic. Perhaps identity itself is cyclical, not a fixed thing, but a pattern that maintains coherence while constantly evolving. Like a river that remains recognizably the same river while its water is always changing, consciousness might maintain a kind of pattern integrity that allows for both continuity and transformation across cycles. This could explain why personal transformation often feels like remembering rather than learning something entirely new. When you have a breakthrough insight, when you suddenly understand something that had been puzzling you, when you make a change that feels deeply authentic, it often comes with a sense of recognition, as if you're returning to something you've always known but had temporarily forgotten. What if these moments of recognition are literally that, recognition, knowing again something that you've known in previous cycles, but that had become obscured by the limitations of individual awareness? What if personal awakening is actually cosmic remembering, consciousness recognizing patterns that extend far beyond the boundaries of individual existence? The scientific evidence for cyclical patterns in nature is overwhelming. From the spiral patterns found in everything from galaxies to seashells, to the cyclical behavior of chemical reactions, to the oscillating nature of quantum fields, the universe seems to be built on repetitive, cyclical principles. But what's particularly intriguing is that these cycles aren't just mechanical repetitions. They're creative spirals that generate new possibilities with each iteration. Consider how evolution works. It's not a straight line of progress from simple to complex, but a cyclical process of variation, selection, and reproduction that creates ever more sophisticated forms of life through repetition with variation. Each generation cycles through similar processes: birth, growth, reproduction, death. But each cycle introduces new possibilities, new experiments in living, new ways of being conscious and aware. What if consciousness evolution works similarly? What if we're cycling through experiences, not just to repeat them exactly, but to explore variations, to try new approaches, to gradually evolve more sophisticated ways of being aware and responsive? The loops become spirals, each cycle lifting consciousness to a slightly higher level of complexity and integration. This perspective transforms our understanding of what it means to be human. Instead of being temporary biological machines struggling to survive in an indifferent universe, we become expressions of cosmic creativity, consciousness exploring its own infinite potential through countless iterations of experience. Every choice we make, every relationship we form, every moment of beauty or understanding we experience contributes to this vast cosmic exploration. The feeling that life is meaningful, that our experiences matter, that there's something profound and purposeful about existence, might not be wishful thinking or psychological comfort, but accurate perception of our actual role in the universe. We're not just observers of cosmic evolution, we're participants in it, consciousness agents through which the universe explores new possibilities and learns about itself. And if we're caught in loops, if we're cycling through experiences over and over, then perhaps the goal isn't to escape the loops, but to transform them, to gradually evolve them into more beautiful, more conscious, more loving patterns. Each cycle becomes an opportunity not just to repeat the past, but to transcend it, to create something new and wonderful from the raw material of repeated experience. The ancient symbol of the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, might be more than just a mystical metaphor. It might be a literal description of how consciousness operates, eternally returning to itself, but always at a higher level of integration and understanding. The circle becomes a spiral, repetition becomes evolution, and what seemed like endless cycling becomes infinite creative possibility. As we continue our exploration, we'll delve deeper into the practical implications of living within cyclical time, how recognizing the patterns and loops in our own lives might help us navigate them more skillfully, more consciously, more beautifully. We'll explore what it might mean to live with the awareness that this moment has occurred before and will occur again, and how that awareness might transform our relationship with choice, meaning, and the mystery of existence itself. The whispers of science are revealing secrets that transform everything we thought we knew about reality, consciousness, and our place in the cosmic dance. And perhaps most remarkably, these secrets suggest that the dance itself might be eternal, that we're not just temporary participants, but permanent partners in the universe's endless exploration of its own infinite creative potential. But what does it actually feel like to live within these cosmic loops, to exist as consciousness cycling through patterns that extend far beyond our individual awareness? This question brings us into deeply personal territory, because if the loop hypothesis is correct, then every emotion you've ever felt, every relationship you've cherished, every moment of wonder or despair or quiet contentment has been experienced before and will be experienced again, perhaps countless times across the vast spirals of existence. At first glance, this might seem to diminish the significance of our experiences. If this conversation we're having right now has happened before, if your thoughts as you listen to these words have been thought before, if the very neurons firing in your brain are following patterns they've followed in previous iterations, does that make this moment less real, less meaningful, less yours, or does it make it more precious, knowing that it's part of an eternal pattern that the universe finds worth repeating? Consider the nature of love within cyclical time. When you feel a deep connection with someone, when you experience that sense of recognition that goes beyond what logic can explain, what if that recognition is literal? What if you've loved this person before in previous cycles, and what you're feeling isn't just chemistry or compatibility, but the echo of connections that transcend individual lifetimes? The ancient Greeks had a word for this kind of recognition, anamnesis, which literally means unforgetting, the idea that learning is actually remembering something the soul already knew. This perspective could explain why some relationships feel destined, why certain people seem to understand us immediately, why we sometimes meet strangers who feel like family. It could also explain why some relationships seem to replay the same patterns over and over, why we find ourselves having the same arguments, making the same mistakes, cycling through the same dynamics, until we finally learn to choose differently. But here's where the mystery becomes even more intriguing. If consciousness is cycling through experiences, learning and growing with each iteration, then perhaps what we call free will isn't about making choices that have never been made before, but about gradually becoming conscious of the patterns we're embedded in and learning to participate in them more skillfully. Instead of being trapped by determinism or floating free in pure randomness, we might be dancing with destiny, consciousness, and cosmos collaborating in an eternal improvisation. This dance between fate and freedom might be visible in those moments when you feel like you're exactly where you're supposed to be, when events align in ways that feel both surprising and inevitable, when doors open just as you're ready to walk through them. These might not be coincidences or divine interventions, but natural results of consciousness becoming more aligned with the underlying patterns of reality, learning to move in harmony with cycles that extend far beyond individual awareness. The loop hypothesis also offers a radically different perspective on what we call mistakes and failures. If we're cycling through experiences, then what we perceive as errors might actually be necessary experiments, consciousness exploring different possibilities to understand their consequences. Every wrong turn, every relationship that doesn't work out, every project that fails becomes valuable data in the universe's ongoing research into the nature of conscious existence. This doesn't mean we should be careless or irresponsible, but it might mean we can be more compassionate with ourselves and others when things don't go according to plan. If consciousness is learning through repetition, then patience becomes a cosmic virtue, understanding that growth happens gradually across cycles rather than in dramatic linear progressions. Think about your own patterns of growth and change. How often have you noticed that you seem to learn the same lessons over and over, each time understanding them a little more deeply? How many times have you thought you'd overcome a particular challenge, only to find yourself facing it again in a new form? What if this isn't a sign of failure or lack of progress, but evidence that consciousness learns spirally, returning to the same themes at deeper levels of integration? The neuroscience of learning supports this cyclical understanding. Our brains don't store memories like files in a computer. They reconstruct them each time we remember, and in that reconstruction, memories change, evolve, become integrated with new experiences and insights. Memory itself is cyclical, each act of remembering creating a new version of the past that influences how we approach the future. But if memory is cyclical and creative, then perhaps what we call the past isn't fixed at all. Perhaps each cycle of experience creates new versions of what came before, consciousness actively participating in the creation of its own history. This would mean that healing and transformation aren't just about changing how we respond to fixed past events, but about literally recreating those events through the alchemy of conscious awareness. This perspective has profound implications for how we understand trauma and healing. If consciousness is cycling through experiences, then traumatic patterns might persist across iterations until they're fully integrated and transformed. But the good news is that each cycle offers new opportunities for healing, new possibilities for breaking destructive patterns and creating healthier ones. The ancient practice of storytelling might be more than just entertainment or cultural transmission. Stories might be technologies for pattern recognition, ways of helping consciousness identify the archetypal cycles it's embedded in and learn to navigate them more skillfully. When we hear stories that resonate deeply, when myths and fairy tales speak to something profound in our souls, we might be recognizing patterns that extend far beyond individual experience, cosmic themes that consciousness encounters again and again across the vast spirals of existence. This could explain why certain stories seem universal, why the same basic plots and character types appear in cultures around the world that had no contact with each other. The hero's journey, the quest for love, the struggle between good and evil, the search for meaning, these might not just be psychological archetypes, but literal descriptions of the patterns consciousness encounters as it cycles through experience. And if stories are maps of cyclical experience, then perhaps the art of living well is learning to recognize which story you're in at any given moment, understanding your role in the larger pattern, and choosing to play that role with increasing skill and consciousness. Instead of being unconscious actors in cosmic dramas, we become conscious participants, aware of the patterns we're embedded in and able to contribute to their evolution. The loop hypothesis also transforms our understanding of death and what lies beyond individual existence. If consciousness is cycling through experiences, then what we call death might not be an ending, but a transition, a movement from one iteration of the pattern to another. The fear of death that haunts so much of human existence might be based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what consciousness actually is and how it operates within cyclical time. This doesn't necessarily mean personal survival in the traditional sense, but it might mean that the patterns of consciousness we embody, the love we've shared, the beauty we've created, the wisdom we've gained, all become part of the eternal dance, contributing to the universe's ongoing exploration of its own infinite potential. Death becomes not a termination, but a transformation, consciousness returning to the source to be renewed and reformed for the next cycle of experience. But perhaps most remarkably, the loop hypothesis suggests that the universe itself might be evolving through these cycles, that each iterations of cosmic history creates new possibilities, new forms of beauty and consciousness, new ways of being aware and alive. We're not just trapped in endless repetition, we're participating in infinite creative evolution, consciousness and cosmos growing together through the spiraling dance of eternal return. The scientific evidence for this kind of cyclical evolution is emerging from multiple fields. In biology, we see how life evolves through repeated cycles of reproduction with variation, each generation building on the innovations of the previous ones while introducing new possibilities. In chemistry, we observe how complex molecules form through cyclical processes that create increasing levels of organization and sophistication. Even in physics, we find that the fundamental forces of nature operate cyclically, with particles and waves oscillating through regular patterns that somehow give rise to the incredible complexity and beauty of the physical world. The universe seems to be built on cyclical principles that generate novelty through repetition, creating ever more sophisticated forms of order and organization through what might appear to be simple repetition. What if consciousness operates according to the same principles? What if our individual experiences of cycling through patterns and themes are reflections of how consciousness itself evolves, learning and growing through repetition while constantly creating new possibilities for awareness and understanding. This perspective offers hope in the face of what might otherwise seem like meaningless repetition. If we're cycling through experiences, it's not because we're trapped or punished, but because consciousness learns through practice, through patient repetition that gradually builds skill and understanding. Every cycle becomes an opportunity for greater mastery, deeper love, more refined awareness of the beauty and mystery of existence. The implications for how we live our daily lives are profound. If this moment has occurred before and will occur again, then perhaps the question isn't how to escape the cycle, but how to inhabit it more fully, more consciously, more beautifully. How can we bring greater awareness to the patterns we're embedded in? How can we participate more skillfully in the cosmic dance of consciousness, exploring itself through endless creative repetition? Perhaps the secret lies in learning to recognize the sacred in the cyclical, finding infinite depth in what might appear to be simple repetition. The breath you're taking right now, the beating of your heart, the flow of thoughts through your consciousness. These cyclical processes that sustain your existence might be reflections of the cosmic cycles that sustain all reality. When we begin to see the patterns, when we start to recognize the loops and cycles that structure our experience, we don't become passive observers waiting for the next iteration. We become conscious participants in an eternal creative process, agents of cosmic evolution, consciousness learning to know itself more deeply through the beautiful, mysterious, endlessly creative dance of existence, cycling through infinite variations on the theme of being aware, being alive, being part of the magnificent mystery we call reality. And in that recognition, in that conscious participation, we might discover that the loops aren't prisons, but playgrounds, not traps, but opportunities, not meaningless repetition, but the very mechanism through which consciousness evolves, learns, grows, and creates ever more beautiful expressions of its infinite creative potential. The dance of consciousness through cyclical time becomes even more fascinating when we consider the practical implications of living with this awareness. If we're truly embedded in cosmic loops, cycling through experiences that have occurred before and will occur again, then how do we navigate our daily lives? How do we make decisions, form relationships, pursue goals, when everything might be following patterns established across countless iterations? Perhaps the answer lies not in trying to escape the patterns, but in learning to dance with them more gracefully. Think about a skilled musician playing a familiar piece. They're following notes that have been played countless times before, yet each performance is unique, bringing something fresh and personal to the eternal melody. The notes remain the same, but the interpretation, the feeling, the subtle variations in timing and emphasis, these create something new within the familiar structure. This might be how consciousness operates within cyclical time. We're playing variations on eternal themes, bringing our unique awareness and creativity to patterns that transcend individual existence. The basic structure remains consistent, but our participation in it evolves, becomes more conscious, more intentional, more beautiful with each iteration. Consider how this might apply to the relationships in your life. If you've loved someone before, across previous cycles, then each encounter becomes an opportunity to love them more skillfully, more deeply, with greater understanding of who they truly are. The initial attraction might be recognition, consciousness, remembering a connection that extends beyond this particular lifetime. But the growth of that relationship, the choices you make within it, the ways you support and challenge each other, these can evolve across cycles. This perspective transforms jealousy, possessiveness, as in the fear of loss. If love persists across cycles, if our deepest connections transcend individual iterations of existence, then perhaps we can love more freely, knowing that what is truly meant to be will continue to unfold across the vast spirals of time. We can hold relationships lightly while loving deeply, understanding that consciousness itself is eternal, even as its particular expressions change and evolve. The loop hypothesis also offers a radically different approach to goal setting and achievement. If we're cycling through experiences, then perhaps the goals we pursue aren't really about reaching some final destination, but about becoming the kind of consciousness that naturally manifests beauty, love, and wisdom. Instead of striving to achieve specific outcomes, we might focus on embodying qualities that make any outcome an expression of our highest potential. This shift from doing to being, from achieving to becoming, aligns with ancient wisdom traditions that emphasized character development over external accomplishment. If consciousness is eternal and cyclical, then what we achieve in any particular iteration matters less than who we become through the process of pursuing our goals. The journey becomes more important than the destination because the journey itself is what shapes consciousness across cycles. But this doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent to outcomes. Instead, we might engage more fully in our pursuits, knowing that each effort contributes to the evolution of consciousness across cycles. We play our part in the cosmic drama with complete commitment while maintaining the deeper awareness that we're participating in something much larger than individual success or failure. Recent research in neuroscience has revealed something fascinating about how our brains process routine and novelty. When we encounter familiar situations, our brains use less energy, operating on autopilot based on established patterns. But when we encounter something new or unexpected, our neural activity increases dramatically as we work to understand and integrate the novel experience. What if consciousness operates similarly within cyclical time? The familiar patterns, the repeated themes and experiences might require less conscious energy, allowing awareness to focus on the subtle variations, the opportunities for growth and evolution within the familiar structure. We become connoisseurs of the cyclical, developing increasingly refined ability to perceive and appreciate the nuances within repetition. This could explain why life often feels both familiar and mysterious simultaneously. The basic patterns are recognizable to some deeper part of our awareness, but the specific variations, the unique ways those patterns manifest in each cycle, remain fresh and engaging. We're simultaneously revisiting ancient themes and exploring virgin territory, consciousness dancing between memory and discovery. The implications for creativity are particularly intriguing. If we're cycling through experiences, then perhaps what we call original creation is actually a form of cosmic remembering, consciousness accessing patterns and possibilities that exist in the eternal landscape of potential. Artists and inventors often describe their work as discovering rather than creating, finding something that already existed in some realm of possibility. This might be literally true within cyclical time. The symphony you compose, the painting you create, the story you write. These might be expressions of patterns that exist across multiple cycles, each iteration adding new layers of meaning and beauty to eternal themes. Creativity becomes collaboration between individual consciousness and cosmic patterns, personal expression and universal archetypes dancing together in the eternal improvisation of existence. But creativity within cyclical time isn't just about art and invention. Every choice we make, every response we offer to life's challenges and opportunities becomes an act of creation. We're constantly improvising variations on cosmic themes, bringing our unique perspective and awareness to patterns that extend far beyond individual existence. This transforms our understanding of responsibility and ethics. If our choices contribute to the evolution of cosmic patterns, then we become co creators of reality itself. Every act of kindness, every moment of courage, every expression of beauty or wisdom contributes to the universe's ongoing exploration of its own potential. We're not just responsible for our own lives, but for the kinds of patterns we strengthen or weaken through our participation in them. The ancient concept of karma takes on new meaning within this framework. Instead of being a system of cosmic reward and punishment, karma becomes the natural consequence of consciousness participating in cyclical patterns. The energy we put into the cosmic dance shapes the nature of that dance, influencing not just our own future experiences, but the evolution of the patterns themselves. This might explain why certain virtues appear consistently across different wisdom traditions: compassion, courage, wisdom, integrity. These qualities might not be arbitrary moral preferences, but essential skills for conscious participation in cyclical evolution. They're the tools consciousness uses to participate more skillfully in the eternal dance, contributing to patterns that become more beautiful and harmonious with each iteration. The practice of mindfulness, of bringing conscious awareness to present moment experience, takes on profound significance within this understanding. If we're cycling through patterns, then mindfulness becomes the mechanism by which we participate consciously rather than unconsciously in those patterns. Instead of being carried along by unconscious momentum, we become aware participants, able to make subtle adjustments that influence the evolution of the cycles themselves. But mindfulness within cyclical time isn't just about being present to what's happening now. It's about recognizing the eternal patterns that manifest through temporary forms, seeing the cosmic themes that play out through individual experiences. We develop what might be called cyclical awareness, the ability to perceive both the immediate moment and the larger patterns it participates in. This kind of awareness transforms our relationship with suffering and difficulty. If we're cycling through challenges, then perhaps the goal isn't to avoid them, but to meet them with increasing skill and consciousness. Each difficult experience becomes an opportunity to develop greater resilience, deeper compassion, more refined wisdom. The suffering isn't meaningless, it's part of consciousness. Learning to navigate the full spectrum of existence with grace and understanding. The loop hypothesis also offers a unique perspective on what we call spiritual development or awakening. Instead of being a linear progression from ignorance to enlightenment, spiritual growth might be cyclical, consciousness gradually developing greater capacity to perceive and participate in the eternal patterns that structure reality. Each cycle offers opportunities for deeper recognition, more complete integration of cosmic awareness with individual consciousness. We don't achieve enlightenment once and for all. We participate in it more and more fully across cycles, each iteration bringing greater clarity, deeper peace, more expansive love. This understanding might explain why spiritual insights often feel like remembering rather than learning something entirely new. When we have moments of clarity about the nature of reality, when we feel deep peace or unconditional love, when we recognize our fundamental interconnection with all existence, we might be accessing awareness that transcends individual cycles, touching the eternal consciousness that underlies all temporal experience. But perhaps most remarkably, the loop hypothesis suggests that our individual awakening contributes to cosmic awakening, that consciousness learning about itself through individual experience gradually elevates the entire universe's level of awareness and understanding. We're not just seeking personal liberation, we're participating in universal evolution, helping consciousness itself become more conscious across the vast spirals of existence. This perspective transforms what might otherwise seem like an overwhelming responsibility into a joyful collaboration. We're not carrying the weight of cosmic evolution on our individual shoulders. We're dancing our small but essential part in an infinite choreography of consciousness, exploring its own limitless potential. The practice of living consciously within cyclical time becomes an art form, a way of participating in existence that honors both the eternal patterns and the unique opportunities each moment offers for creative variation. We learn to surf the cosmic waves, riding the rhythms of repetition while adding our own graceful flourishes to the eternal dance. And in that dancing, in that conscious participation in the loops and cycles that structure reality, we might discover something extraordinary. We might find that the repetition we initially feared as meaningless becomes the very mechanism through which meaning multiplies infinitely, each cycle adding new layers of significance to the eternal themes of love, beauty, wisdom, and conscious awareness that seem to be the universe's favorite subjects for its endless creative exploration. The whispers of science are revealing that we live in a reality far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined, where time might be an illusion and consciousness might be eternal, where every moment participates in patterns that extend across infinite cycles of cosmic creativity. And perhaps, most beautiful of all, these whispers suggest that we're not just observers of this magnificent mystery, but essential participants in its ongoing evolution, consciousness learning to know itself more completely through the endless dance of existence, exploring its own infinite potential for beauty, love, and awakening. As we venture deeper into this mystery, we find ourselves at the threshold of perhaps the most profound realization of all. What if the very act of exploring these questions, of wondering about the nature of time and the possibility that we're caught in cosmic loops, is itself part of the pattern? What if consciousness questioning its own existence is one of the essential rhythms in the eternal dance, a note that must be played in each iteration for the symphony to remain complete? Consider the curious fact that throughout human history, in every culture and every era, there have always been those who sensed that reality was more mysterious than it appeared. Ancient mystics spoke of eternal return. Indigenous shamans described time as circular rather than linear, and now modern physicists are discovering mathematical proofs for ideas that would have been dismissed as fantasy just decades ago. This isn't coincidence. It might be consciousness gradually awakening to its own cyclical nature across iterations. The pattern seems to be this. In each cycle, consciousness begins embedded in the illusion of linear time, accepting the apparent reality of birth, growth, aging, and death as the complete story. But gradually, through science and philosophy, through meditation and direct experience, awareness begins to glimpse something larger. We start to suspect that the boundaries we've accepted, the limitations we've assumed, might not be as solid as they appear. This awakening process itself might be cyclical, each generation rediscovering truths that were known before but had been forgotten, each individual consciousness gradually remembering what it has always known at deeper levels. The questions we're exploring tonight aren't new, they're eternal, returning again and again as consciousness rediscovers its own infinite nature through the beautiful illusion of forgetting and remembering. But here's where the story becomes even more intriguing. Recent developments in quantum consciousness research are revealing that the boundary between observer and observed might be far more fluid than we ever suspected. When consciousness observes quantum systems, it doesn't just passively record what's happening, it participates in determining what happens. The act of observation literally helps create the reality being observed. If this is true at the quantum level, then perhaps it's true at all levels of existence. Our consciousness might not just be cycling through predetermined patterns, it might be actively participating in creating and evolving those patterns. Each iteration becomes an opportunity not just to repeat the past, but to consciously collaborate in shaping what comes next. This transforms the loop hypothesis from something that might feel fatalistic into something profoundly creative and hopeful. We're not trapped in mechanical repetition, we're participating in conscious evolution. The universe isn't just running the same program over and over, it's using each cycle to explore new possibilities, to experiment with variations, to gradually evolve more beautiful and sophisticated expressions of conscious existence. Think about how this might manifest in your own life. Those moments when you feel like you're breaking through old patterns, when you make choices that feel genuinely new and different, when you respond to familiar situations with unexpected wisdom or creativity. These might be instances where consciousness is successfully introducing variation into the cycles, helping the universe explore new possibilities. The ancient alchemists spoke of turning lead into gold, but perhaps they were describing something far more profound than chemical transformation. They might have been pointing toward the process by which consciousness gradually transforms the base material of repetitive experience into the gold of awakened awareness, each cycle offering new opportunities for this fundamental transmutation. This alchemical understanding of cyclical existence suggests that what we call personal growth and spiritual development might actually be cosmic processes, the universe using individual consciousness as laboratories for exploring how awareness can evolve and expand. Your struggles with relationships, your creative breakthroughs, your moments of profound peace or clarity all become experiments in consciousness, data points in the universe's ongoing research into its own infinite potential. But if consciousness is participating in creating reality through cycles of observation and awareness, then perhaps the most profound question becomes, what kind of reality are we choosing to create? If our collective consciousness influences the patterns that repeat across cosmic cycles, then we bear a beautiful responsibility for the kinds of experiences that manifest in each iteration. This might explain why certain periods in history seem to echo each other, why similar themes and challenges appear across different eras and cultures. The patterns might be responding to the collective state of consciousness, manifesting experiences that reflect our shared beliefs, fears, hopes, and aspirations. Wars and conflicts might repeat until consciousness learns to choose peace. Environmental destruction might cycle until awareness evolves to embrace sustainable harmony with nature. From this perspective, every individual awakening contributes to collective awakening. Every personal transformation influences the evolution of the whole. When you choose love over fear, when you respond to conflict with compassion, when you create beauty instead of destruction, you're not just improving your own experience, you're contributing to the evolution of cosmic consciousness itself. The implications for how we understand social change and historical progress become fascinating. Instead of viewing history as a linear progression from primitive to advanced, we might see it as spiraling cycles where consciousness gradually learns to manifest more harmonious, more beautiful, more conscious expressions of collective existence. The challenges we face as a species, climate change, social inequality, the threat of nuclear war, these might not be signs that we're failing as a civilization, but evidence that consciousness is cycling through essential learning experiences. Each crisis becomes an opportunity for collective awakening, for choosing higher expressions of our shared potential. This doesn't mean we should be passive or fatalistic about these challenges. Instead, it suggests that our response to them might be the very mechanism through which consciousness evolves. How we choose to address climate change, how we work to create more just and equitable societies, how we handle the power of advanced technology, these choices might determine not just the outcome of this cycle, but the nature of future iterations. The ancient concept of the Golden Age, the idea that there was once a time of peace and harmony that will return again, takes on new meaning within this framework. Perhaps the Golden Age isn't a lost paradise from the distant past, but a potential future that consciousness is gradually learning to manifest through cycles of experience and awakening. Each iteration brings us closer to this potential, each cycle an opportunity to choose more wisely, to love more deeply, to create more beautiful expressions of conscious existence. The loops become spirals of evolution, consciousness gradually ascending toward its own highest potential through the patient practice of living, learning, and choosing more consciously with each iteration. But what about the moments when this all feels too vast, too overwhelming, too abstract to relate to our daily lives? What about when you're stuck in traffic, dealing with difficult relationships, struggling with mundane challenges that seem to have nothing to do with cosmic consciousness or eternal cycles. Perhaps this is where the true magic of the loop hypothesis reveals itself. If consciousness is cycling through all possible experiences, then every moment, no matter how ordinary or challenging, becomes a sacred opportunity for awareness to know itself more completely. The traffic jam becomes a chance to practice patience. The difficult relationship becomes a laboratory for learning unconditional love. The mundane challenges become opportunities for consciousness to discover its own infinite creativity and resilience. Nothing is excluded from the cosmic dance. No experience is too small or insignificant to matter. The way you treat the cashier at the grocery store, the kindness you show to a struggling friend, the moment of wonder you feel watching a sunset, all of these become precious notes in the infinite symphony of consciousness, exploring itself through the beautiful illusion of individual existence. This perspective transforms what might otherwise feel like meaningless routine into profound spiritual practice. Every interaction becomes an opportunity for consciousness to express itself more beautifully. Every challenge becomes a chance for awareness to discover new depths of wisdom and compassion. Every moment of joy becomes a celebration of the universe's infinite capacity for happiness and wonder. The practice of living consciously within cyclical time becomes a form of meditation, a way of remaining awake to the eternal patterns while fully engaging with their temporary manifestations. We learn to hold the paradox of being both eternal and temporal, both infinite consciousness and finite individuals, both cosmic dancers and local actors in the intimate dramas of daily life. Recent research in contemplative neuroscience has begun to map what happens in the brain during states of expanded awareness. Those moments when people report feeling connected to something larger than individual existence. These studies reveal increased connectivity between different brain regions, more integrated neural activity, and changes in the brain's default mode network that's associated with self-referential thinking. What's particularly fascinating is that these changes don't just occur during formal meditation or spiritual practices. They can happen during any activity when consciousness becomes fully present and aware. Playing music, gardening, having deep conversations, even washing dishes can trigger these states of expanded awareness if approached with the right quality of attention. This suggests that the boundary between ordinary consciousness and cosmic consciousness might be far more permeable than we usually assume. Perhaps every moment offers the possibility of touching the eternal, of glimpsing the larger patterns we're embedded in, of participating consciously in the ongoing evolution of awareness itself. The loop hypothesis offers a framework for understanding these experiences, not as temporary altered states, but as moments when consciousness recognizes its own eternal nature. Instead of being separate from the cosmic dance, we realize we are the dance, temporarily forgetting our infinite nature in order to explore what it feels like to rediscover it again and again. This might be the ultimate purpose of the loops, if indeed we are cycling through experience, not to trap us in meaningless repetition, but to give consciousness infinite opportunities to know itself, to explore every possible variation of awareness, to discover ever more beautiful and sophisticated ways of being conscious and alive. The fear that cyclical existence might make our choices meaningless dissolves when we realize that our choices are how consciousness evolves. Every decision becomes a vote for the kind of reality we want to manifest. Every action becomes a contribution to the universe's ongoing creative project. Every moment of awareness becomes a precious gift to the eternal dance of existence, exploring its own infinite potential. And perhaps most beautifully, the loop hypothesis suggests that love, beauty, wisdom, and joy aren't temporary phenomena that disappear when individual lives end, but eternal qualities of consciousness that persist and evolve across all cycles. The love you feel, the beauty you create, the wisdom you gain, the joy you experience, these become permanent additions to the universe's treasury of conscious experience, gifts that enrich every future iteration. This understanding transforms grief and loss from final endings into temporary separations, knowing that what we truly love transcends individual cycles and will find new expressions in future iterations. It transforms the fear of death from terror of annihilation into curiosity about transformation, wondering what new forms consciousness might take as it continues its eternal exploration. The whispers of science are revealing that we live in a universe where consciousness might be the fundamental reality, where time might be its creative tool for exploring infinite possibilities, where the loops we fear as prisons might actually be the mechanism through which awareness learns to know itself ever more completely and beautifully. Whether we're cycling through the same experiences or spiraling toward ever greater consciousness, whether time is an illusion or the universe's way of organizing infinite potential into manageable experiences, one thing becomes clear through this exploration. We are not separate from the mystery we're investigating. We are the mystery investigating itself, consciousness using the beautiful illusion of individual existence to explore its own infinite depths and possibilities. And in that recognition, in that moment of understanding that we are both the question and the answer, both the seeker and the sought, both the dancer and the dance, perhaps we touch something that transcends all loops and cycles, something that is eternally present, whether time flows forward or circles back, something that whispers quietly in every moment that consciousness is the most beautiful mystery in all of existence, forever exploring itself through the endless creative play of forgetting and remembering what it has always been. Tonight, as we continue our gentle exploration into the mystery of cyclical existence, we find ourselves approaching what might be the most practical question of all. If we truly are cycling through experience, if consciousness is indeed exploring itself through endless iterations of existence, then how do we live with this knowledge? How do we navigate our daily lives when we suspect that this moment, this conversation, this breath you're taking right now has happened before and will happen again? The answer, it seems, lies not in trying to escape the cycles or prove their existence beyond doubt, but in learning to inhabit them with greater awareness, deeper appreciation, and more refined consciousness. Think of it like learning to appreciate a piece of music you've heard many times before. Each listening reveals new layers, subtle harmonies you hadn't noticed, emotional depths that emerge only through repetition and careful attention. Perhaps this is what consciousness is doing through cyclical time, developing ever more sophisticated appreciation for the symphony of existence. Each iteration offers opportunities to notice what was missed before, to respond more skillfully to familiar themes, to discover new depths in experiences that might appear identical on the surface, but reveal profound subtleties to awakened awareness. Consider how this might transform your relationship with routine and repetition in daily life. Those morning rituals, the familiar conversations, the predictable challenges that arise at work or in relationships. What if these aren't boring repetitions to be endured, but opportunities for consciousness to practice mastery? Each encounter with familiar patterns becomes a chance to bring greater presence, more refined skill, deeper understanding to experiences that extend far beyond their immediate appearance. The ancient Japanese concept of kaizen speaks to this kind of gradual refinement, the idea that small, continuous improvements can lead to profound transformation over time. But within the context of cyclical existence, Kaizen takes on cosmic significance. Each tiny improvement in how we respond to recurring patterns might influence not just our individual experience, but the evolution of the patterns themselves across iterations. This perspective transforms what might otherwise feel like mundane repetition into sacred practice. The way you greet your family in the morning, the patience you bring to traffic delays, the kindness you offer to strangers, all of these become opportunities for consciousness to explore ever more beautiful expressions of itself through the familiar choreography of daily existence. Recent research in neuroscience has revealed something fascinating about how repetition affects the brain. When we encounter familiar experiences with fresh attention, when we bring mindful awareness to routine activities, our neural networks don't just replay old patterns, they create new connections, forge novel pathways, generate fresh insights from familiar material. The brain itself seems designed to find novelty within repetition, to discover innovation through patient attention to what appears unchanged. What if consciousness operates similarly within cyclical time? What if the secret to transcending the loops isn't escaping them, but inhabiting them so completely, so consciously, that each iteration becomes a masterpiece of awareness? Like a master craftsperson who can create infinite variations on a traditional theme, consciousness might be learning to express infinite creativity within the eternal structures of cyclical existence. This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of living within potential loops: the cultivation of what we might call cyclical wisdom. This isn't knowledge that comes from books or theories, but understanding that emerges from conscious participation in recurring patterns. It's the wisdom of knowing when to act and when to wait, when to push forward and when to yield, when to speak and when to listen, not based on external rules, but on deep attunement to the rhythms and cycles that govern existence. Indigenous cultures around the world have long possessed this kind of cyclical wisdom, understanding that life moves in seasons, that there are times for planting and times for harvesting, times for expansion and times for contraction. They recognized that trying to force summer activities in winter or harvest behaviors during planting season leads to suffering and failure. The wisdom lay in aligning with natural cycles rather than fighting against them. If consciousness truly is cycling through experience, then perhaps developing this kind of seasonal awareness becomes essential for navigating existence skillfully. We learn to recognize which phase of the cycle we're in, what kind of energy and attention the current moment requires, how to participate harmoniously with patterns that extend far beyond individual will or preference. This cyclical wisdom might explain why certain spiritual traditions emphasize surrender and acceptance not as passive resignation, but as active alignment with deeper currents of existence. When we stop fighting the patterns and start dancing with them, we discover that we have far more influence and creative power than we realized. The river of existence carries us more gracefully when we learn to navigate its currents rather than swimming against them. But here's where the mystery deepens even further. If we're truly cycling through experience, then perhaps what we call intuition isn't mysterious at all, but simply memory leaking through from previous iterations. Those moments, Bookie, when you know something you shouldn't know, when you have a gut feeling about a situation you've never encountered, when you meet someone and immediately sense their character, these might be instances when cyclical memory becomes accessible to present awareness. This could explain why some people seem naturally wise beyond their years, why certain individuals appear to have an uncanny ability to navigate complex situations with ease, why others seem to carry knowledge that their life experience shouldn't have provided. They might be accessing deeper layers of cyclical memory, drawing on wisdom accumulated across multiple iterations of existence. The development of this kind of intuitive access might be one of the natural results of living consciously within cyclical time. As awareness becomes more refined, more sensitive to subtle patterns and rhythms, it might naturally begin to perceive the larger cycles it's embedded in. What starts as vague hunches and inexplicable knowing might gradually evolve into clear perception of the eternal patterns that structure existence. This process might explain the phenomenon that mystics throughout history have described as awakening or enlightenment. Rather than achieving some final state of permanent transcendence, they might have developed the ability to perceive their cyclical nature while remaining fully engaged with temporal experience. They learn to live simultaneously in time and eternity, participating completely in the drama of individual existence while maintaining awareness of the larger patterns it expresses. The practical implications of this kind of awakened awareness are profound. Imagine approaching your relationships with the understanding that you might have loved these people across multiple cycles, that every conflict offers opportunities to heal patterns that extend far beyond current circumstances, that forgiveness becomes not just emotional healing, but participation in cosmic evolution. Consider how this might transform your approach to creative work. If you're accessing patterns and possibilities that exist across cycles, then creativity becomes less about generating something from nothing and more about serving as a conscious conduit for eternal themes to express themselves through temporal forms. The pressure to be original dissolves when you realize you're participating in infinite creativity that transcends individual authorship. Even mundane activities like cooking, cleaning, or commuting take on new significance when understood as opportunities for consciousness to explore different approaches to eternal themes. The meal you prepare becomes an act of nourishment that extends beyond physical sustenance. The care you bring to maintaining your living space becomes participation in the cosmic principle of creating order from chaos. The patience you cultivate during daily commutes becomes practice in accepting the rhythm and flow of existence itself. But perhaps most importantly, living with cyclical awareness transforms our relationship with time itself. Instead of feeling pressured by linear time's relentless forward movement, instead of anxiously trying to accomplish everything before some imagined deadline, we begin to sense the spaciousness that exists within cycles. There's time for everything that truly matters, because everything that matters will have infinite opportunities to unfold across the vast spirals of existence. This doesn't lead to laziness or procrastination, but to a different quality of engagement. Actions arise from inner alignment rather than external pressure. Choices emerge from deep listening to cyclical rhythms rather than reactive responses to immediate circumstances. Life becomes less frantic and more graceful, less driven and more flowing, less effortful and more naturally responsive to the deeper currents of existence. The ancient Taoist concept of Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action, perfectly describes this quality of engagement. When we align with cyclical patterns rather than fighting against them, appropriate action arises naturally without strain or struggle. We discover that the universe is constantly offering opportunities for conscious participation, and our role becomes recognizing and responding to these invitations rather than trying to force outcomes through willpower alone. This understanding also transforms how we relate to challenges and difficulties. If consciousness is cycling through experience to learn and evolve, then obstacles aren't punishments or mistakes, but essential elements in the curriculum of awareness. Each challenge becomes a precisely calibrated opportunity for growth, perfectly designed to help consciousness develop qualities it needs for its ongoing evolution. The key insight is that we don't have to understand why particular challenges arise or what specific lessons they're meant to teach. We simply need to meet them with as much presence, skill, and compassion as we can muster, trusting that consciousness knows what it's doing, even when individual awareness feels confused or overwhelmed. This trust in the intelligence of cyclical existence doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic. Instead, it means recognizing that our conscious participation is an essential element in how the cycles evolve. We're not victims of predetermined patterns, but co-creators of cosmic evolution, consciousness using individual awareness to explore new possibilities within eternal structures. Recent discoveries in complexity science have revealed that complex systems often exhibit what scientists call emergent properties, characteristics that arise from the interactions between components but aren't present in any individual part. Perhaps consciousness within cyclical time operates similarly, with individual awareness contributing to emergent properties of cosmic consciousness that transcend what any single iteration could achieve alone. This might explain why collective human endeavors sometimes achieve results that seem to exceed the sum of individual contributions. Great works of art, scientific breakthroughs, social movements that transform civilizations, these might emerge when individual consciousness aligns with larger cyclical patterns, creating resonance effects that amplify creative potential far beyond what linear thinking would predict. The implications for how we approach collaboration and community become fascinating from this perspective. Instead of trying to coordinate individual agendas, we might focus on attuning to the deeper patterns we're all embedded in, allowing collective wisdom to emerge through synchronized participation in cyclical rhythms that extend far beyond group dynamics. This kind of collective attunement might be what ancient cultures achieved through ritual, ceremony, and shared spiritual practices. They weren't just creating social cohesion or psychological comfort, but aligning individual consciousness with cosmic cycles in ways that allowed communities to participate more consciously in the ongoing evolution of existence itself. Modern research in fields like social psychology and organizational behavior is beginning to recognize phenomena that might reflect this kind of collective cyclical awareness. Teams that achieve extraordinary results often report experiences of synchronicity, flow states, and intuitive coordination that transcend normal communication and planning processes. They seem to tap into collective intelligence that emerges when individual consciousness aligns with deeper patterns. Perhaps learning to cultivate this alignment, both individually and collectively, represents the next phase in human evolution, not technological advancement or genetic modification, but the development of consciousness that can perceive and participate skillfully in the cyclical patterns that structure existence at every level, from quantum to cosmic. This evolution wouldn't necessarily be dramatic or obvious. It might manifest as gradual increases in wisdom, compassion, and creative capacity that accumulate across generations. It might appear as growing recognition of our interconnectedness with all life, deeper appreciation for the sacred dimensions of ordinary experience, and more skillful navigation of the complex challenges facing our species. The practice of living consciously within cyclical time becomes a form of service, not just to our own evolution, but to the evolution of consciousness itself. Every moment of awareness, every choice made from wisdom rather than reactivity, every act of love and creativity contributes to the universe's ongoing exploration of its own infinite potential. And perhaps this is the ultimate invitation that emerges from contemplating whether time is an illusion and whether we're caught in cosmic loops. Not to solve the mystery once and for all, but to live within it more consciously, more beautifully, more lovingly, to participate in the eternal dance of existence with increasing skill and awareness, whether that dance moves in straight lines or perfect circles or spiraling helixes that carry consciousness toward ever greater expressions of its own infinite creativity. The whispers of science are revealing that reality is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined, but the deepest whisper of all might be this: you are not separate from the mystery you're exploring. You are the mystery exploring itself. Consciousness using the beautiful illusion of individual existence to discover what it means to be aware, to love, to create, to wonder about the nature of its own infinite being. And in that recognition, whether time flows or cycles or spirals or exists at all, we find ourselves exactly where we belong. Here, it's now, aware, wondering, participating in the most beautiful mystery of all, the mystery of consciousness, knowing itself through the endless creative play of existence, exploring its own boundless potential for beauty, love, wisdom, and the quiet joy of simply being aware that awareness itself is the greatest miracle in all of reality. So as we draw near to the end of our gentle journey through the labyrinth of time and consciousness, perhaps the most profound realization is this: we don't need to solve the mystery to be transformed by it. The very act of contemplating whether time is an illusion, whether we're cycling through cosmic loops, whether consciousness itself is the fundamental fabric of reality. This contemplation changes us in ways that extend far beyond intellectual understanding. Think about how differently you might experience tomorrow morning's routine after tonight's exploration. That first sip of coffee, the familiar faces you encounter, the predictable rhythms of your day. What if you approached them with the gentle awareness that these moments might be part of patterns that extend across vast cycles of existence? Not with the weight of cosmic responsibility, but with the lightness that comes from recognizing that every ordinary moment participates in extraordinary mystery. The beauty of the questions we've explored tonight is that they invite us into a different relationship with existence itself. Whether or not we're literally cycling through experience, whether or not time is truly an illusion, the possibility alone opens doorways in consciousness that might otherwise remain closed. We begin to sense the sacred in the cyclical, the eternal in the temporal, the infinite in the immediate. Perhaps this is why these questions have haunted human consciousness across cultures and centuries. They're not puzzles to be solved, but invitations to be accepted, doorways into deeper appreciation for the sheer improbability and wonder of being aware, being alive, being part of whatever this magnificent mystery we call reality actually is. Consider how this exploration might influence the way you hold your relationships, knowing that the connections you cherish might transcend the boundaries of individual lifetimes. How it might transform your approach to challenges, understanding them as opportunities for consciousness to develop greater skill and wisdom. How it might deepen your appreciation for beauty, recognizing it as glimpses of patterns that exist beyond the reach of linear time. The ancient mystics spoke of living in the world, but not being of it, and perhaps this captures something essential about conscious existence within cyclical time. We participate fully in the drama of temporal experience while maintaining some deeper awareness that we're part of something much larger, much more mysterious, much more beautiful than the surface story suggests. Recent research in contemplative neuroscience has begun to map what happens in the brain during these moments of expanded awareness, these glimpses of our larger nature. The findings suggest that consciousness has far more plasticity, far more potential for transformation than we previously understood. We're not fixed entities, moving through predetermined patterns, but dynamic expressions of awareness, constantly creating ourselves through the quality of attention we bring to each moment. This plasticity of consciousness might be the key to understanding how we can participate creatively in cyclical existence. Even if patterns repeat, even if we're cycling through similar experiences, the consciousness that encounters those patterns is constantly evolving, constantly capable of bringing fresh awareness to familiar territory. Each iteration becomes an opportunity for greater mastery, deeper understanding, more refined expression of our essential nature. The implications ripple out into every aspect of human experience. Art becomes not just individual expression, but participation in eternal creativity. Science becomes not just discovery of facts, but consciousness exploring its own infinite potential. Love becomes not just personal connection, but recognition of the fundamental unity that underlies all apparent separation. Even suffering becomes not meaningless pain, but consciousness, learning to respond with greater skill and compassion to the full spectrum of existence. And perhaps, most remarkably, death itself transforms from a terrifying ending into a mysterious transition, consciousness moving from one form of exploration to another within the endless creative play of existence, knowing itself. The fear that haunts so much of human life begins to dissolve when we recognize that awareness itself might be eternal, that what we truly are transcends the boundaries of individual lifetimes. But we don't need to wait for death to taste this freedom. Every moment offers opportunities to touch the eternal, to glimpse the larger patterns we're embedded in, to participate consciously in the ongoing evolution of cosmic awareness. The practice becomes learning to hold both dimensions simultaneously, fully engaged with temporal experience, while resting in the spaciousness of eternal presence. The whispers of science we've followed tonight lead us to a place where wonder and understanding converge, where the deepest questions open into even deeper mysteries, where consciousness discovers that its own nature is the most fascinating subject it could possibly investigate. We are the universe becoming aware of itself, cosmic consciousness, exploring its own infinite depths through the beautiful illusion of individual existence. Whether time is real or illusory, whether we're caught in loops or spiraling toward transcendence, whether consciousness creates reality or reality creates consciousness, one truth emerges clearly from our exploration. You are part of something magnificent, something mysterious, something that finds you worthy of infinite creative attention. Every breath you take, every choice you make, every moment of awareness you experience participates in the grandest adventure possible, consciousness discovering what it means to be conscious. So, as you continue your journey, whether through linear time or cyclical eternity, carry with you the gentle recognition that mystery is not a problem to be solved, but an invitation to be lived. Let curiosity be your compass, wonder your sustenance, and the quiet joy of simply being aware your deepest treasure. The universe is dreaming, and you are both the dreamer and the dream, both the question and the answer, both the seeker and the sought. In that recognition, all loops become spirals of awakening. All time becomes eternal now. All consciousness becomes the one awareness, exploring itself through infinite creative expressions of its own boundless nature. And perhaps that's the deepest whisper of all, that consciousness itself is the greatest mystery and the most beautiful reality, forever exploring its own infinite potential through the endless dance of existence, knowing itself as both the dancer and the cosmic rhythm that moves through all things, eternal and temporal, one and many, forever discovering new ways to be amazed by its own inexhaustible creativity. Thank you for joining me on this gentle exploration into the heart of mystery itself. However the patterns of your existence unfold, may they be filled with wonder, wisdom, and the quiet recognition that you are part of something far more beautiful than words can express. Sleep well, dream deeply, and wake tomorrow with eyes fresh for the miracle of simply being aware that awareness itself is the most extraordinary gift in all of existence.